Welcome to another session of weCONECT, where we explore the ideas, companies, and key players that continue to raise the bar in eDiscovery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar channel of the Association of Certified eDiscovery Specialists. My name is Mike Quartararo. I am the president of ACEDS. Today, we have a special treat. We are joined by our partner, iConnect, for a webinar entitled Using eDiscovery Tools to Solve Business Problems in Other Industries. Let's see what this turns out to be. I am pleased to introduce Ian Campbell, President and CEO of iConnect. Ian, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to get an opportunity to talk to you and the audience that we have with us.
Awesome. So I want to dive right in here because we're going to talk about a bunch of things, but we're going to be looking at the platform a little bit. We're going to talk about eDiscovery. We're going to talk about the industry. What, in your estimation, Ian, what makes up the foundational components of an eDiscovery tool? And while you're at it, what makes iConnect's approach to eDiscovery a little different than other tools in the industry?
It's a great question, Mike. And I think, as you and I were sort of preparing for this, we were talking a little bit about, I'll just do a quick screen share here so we can stay on the same page. I'll go share and minimize, and hopefully you're now seeing my screen.
I am. Fantastic.
Perfect, perfect. And yeah, I think the interesting thing about what we do as a technology is that we allow people to do things they want to do outside of eDiscovery. I mean, there's a lot of paper in the world. It's not all in litigation. There's a lot of people who are looking for unique ways to be able to view a document through the internet. I remember in the early days of iConnect, whenever there was TIFF images, finding a TIFF plugin where you could actually view a TIFF image in a browser was really, really hard. And there were very few technologies that allowed you to do it. That now is really commonplace. Albeit that the Dropbox and SharePoint and Box are great technologies to hold your stuff. They're not great places to search your stuff. They're not great places to add labels and tags to things. They're not great ways to control the shareability of different assets. And then, of course, the access to that from really from around the world is certainly key. It's something that we all take for granted in the eDiscovery business, certainly eDiscovery review business. And then, of course, the sharing, printing, being able to control who has access and what they can do with it. So I think foundationally, there's a lot of things that we do natively within an application that really are foundational to what we do. But there are other industries out there who look at what we do and kind of go, wow, I wish we had a tool like that. And what we've tried to do, certainly as an organization, is continue to look for ways to be able to allow people that level of access. I mean, for example, this is a diagram. I put a date on this for you just to give some context. This is a diagram I did in November of 1999. And we had a client in Toronto, actually. And they said, hey, we've got all this information. It's sitting in a concordance database. You can see a little concordance icon down here. And is there a way we can get to that from 18 different locations across the country? And at the time, there wasn't much out there. Case Central was in market at that point in time, but you had to send all your documents to San Francisco. And we figured out a way to do it. We developed the iConnect platform that sat on top of the database, and through right there, the World Wide Web, probably using a Netscape browser, people who were doing offsite research and counsel and clients could actually all come in and access the data. And I think, it's interesting that diagram here that we did, 22 years ago now, is actually the same diagram that is still foundational not only to our platform, but to virtually every web-based eDiscovery platform that's out there, certainly that's used for multi-party access to documents. And, gone are the days, and just to kind of emphasize here, we ended up, over here, everything was paper, back in '99. And that has migrated, of course, now to mobile and cloud and hard drives and backup tapes and videos and scans and mobile. And we even have an API where people can actually connect third-party data and data pump directly into just what you see, a standard system which is controlled access over here on the right-hand side from the different people who need to come in. Everything is actually stored a little uniquely away from the database itself. So we don't store the things like videos or even documents inside the database. We store them external. But I think, again, some of the unique things that we approach it with are the fact that we encourage people to run this behind their own firewall. We have not gone and set up a master iConnect archive where everything has to come to us. We feel that people want to own and be responsible for their own data. So from that perspective, they can set it up behind their firewall. They can put it in Azure or AWS, or they can use a worldwide network of partners. And so again, kind of interesting from my perspective that, 20 years ago we had an idea, and here we are. We're still using that idea, certainly in the eDiscovery area, but we're also now identifying other industries that can use the same technology to their advantage to solve their business problems.
So, Ian, I just want to be clear. So, iConnect users of iConnect can put it behind the firewall. They can use it as a pure cloud-based play. Is there another opportunity? And then, and talk a little bit. You're sort of talking about the foundation, right? But this is not old technology. This is current. This is the code is new. It's well, you speak to it because I'm going to muck it up.
No, you know what? You're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's interesting. I was on LinkedIn recently, and the iConnect profile said that iConnect had been a member of LinkedIn for 20 years and 11 months. And I went, wow, I didn't know LinkedIn had been around for 20 years and 11 months. And then I went, oh, wait a minute, that means we've been around for 20 years and 11 months. And I think people don't look at LinkedIn that, hey, it was written in Fortran and BASIC. People look at LinkedIn and say, hey, this is a very smooth user experience that is it's business focused, and it does what I need it to do. And that's kind of the category that we fall into. I mean, I think beyond the fact that we're always reinventing the platform, adding newer and newer technologies to continually make it faster, smarter, stronger, make it adapt to the multiple of new browsers that seem to come up, almost daily these days with all the updates. Our job is to make sure that we continue to operate with a lot of efficiency in those areas. And in fact, I think the other area is the fact that we've got a wealth of experience. I mean, having been doing what we've been doing for quite some time, you'll notice an Enron logo in there. I mean, we did the Enron case. We were used for 53 million pages of evidence in the Enron case back in 2003. And, you've got other cases that have used the iConnect technology to, again, very simply set up a centralized archive of all the documents in a project and allow multiple parties to all come in and access that data. And, you can see the vast array of different industries and different companies who have used iConnect technology in one way or another. The NASA one's always an interesting one, and I know you've heard the story before, Mike, but some of your audience might not have. NASA contacted us in 2004. Was when the Columbia came down from space and blew up on reentry when the heat tiles came off, and we literally got a call from NASA, and they said, "Let me just understand. We can put all the information in one place, and then we can have multiple parties from around the world, experts, come in and access the data." And we said, "Yes, that's how it works." And the gentleman on the phone said, "And all we need is a browser, and we can securely access all the data." I said, "Yes, that's exactly how it works." And then he asked the most bizarre question I've ever heard. And he said, "How does iConnect manage extraterrestrial access to the data?" That was a real question. And so we kind of looked at each other around the room, and we said, "So exactly what do you need it to do?" And the guy said, "Well, we got 4 really smart people up there on the space station, and they're going to have nothing to do for 18 months until we can get them out of that tin can. So if you can figure out a way to make them reviewers on this project, they've got a lot of value that they can bring to the table." And we did. So 4 of the reviewers on that project were, in fact, astronauts on the space station. So the next time any of your audience go, "Hey, but I've got remote users," believe me, we've dealt with remote users, and we're very, very excited about that. But the other thing is the other area we get involved in. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to make a William Shatner joke because he could review documents.
That's right. That's right. Well, and the other thing is that, security is such a big deal as well. I mean, we're going to talk about breach in a little while, but security is a big deal. And the fact that iConnect is being used by some of the world's largest organizations for some of the most sensitive data, the fact that we are FedRAMP certified, it means we've gone through that gauntlet of security work that's required in order to be able to manage documents of that size and scope. So again, we're very excited to be able to bring to market a platform that not only has a wealth of experience and depth, it's also using the latest technologies vetted by the world's largest organizations. And, and I think now, from our perspective, we go, great, where do we go from here? Is there a place for us to then go one step further into other companies and other markets who have similar challenges to those of security, viewing, search, access, and sharing? And that's what we're here to talk about today.
All right, before we go there, let's talk a little bit about like interface, right? So what's different about the UI? What's different about the user experience? What's new and interesting there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm just going to go into an iConnect system here for a second to show that. A few unique things. Works in any browser, can work with multi-factor authentication. The fact that the user interface can go into any language. So if I have Japanese users, I click one button and every piece of instruction in the entire application is now in fact in Japanese. So it gives you, again, not only the ability to manage data, which is foreign language, but also to build a UI, which is foreign language. Similarly, list of different documents you might want to get into. If I want to go in and have a look at an overall sort of overarching dashboard of activity, which is happening in my case, I can do that. But then even from a records perspective, the ability to come in and kind of look at all the information in a whole bunch of different ways, including thumbnail mode. And this is one that's very exciting for our users, because nothing better than going, oh, look, a bunch of marketing materials, and with nothing more than a control, you go click, 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 and then you sort of drag them over into a folder. And I think it's that level of intuitiveness that people expect these days. I mean, I think one of the challenges for us as software developers is the fact that people expect this. They expect the same experience they have on their mobile phone, where they download an app and they just start working. They just jump in and start working. And again, that's the experience that we've really tried to create for people. The ability to be able to go into to a group of documents, set up a series of folders, have a document history, which is tracking all the activity on a specific item, being able to automatically go and click on related with one click. All of a sudden, I'm looking at similar information. And I think ultimately, from our perspective, our goal really is to go and develop a UI, which is really, really simple for people to use, super simple for them to navigate. No longer, gone are the days of a week-long training session for your review tool. Instead, you can just jump in and work, and that's really what we've gone and built. And I think what that means for, again, those folks in other industries who are looking to solve business problems, it's not only is the foundation of the code there to be able to help do that, the user experience is one where they don't really have to learn something new. They can take all those skills they've used in other applications and apply it directly to solving that other business problem.
And that's a great segue to a huge question that we hope to get to today. Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges, Ian, around the sort of we work in an industry that's so adjacent to privacy, to cyber, to breach issues, to just managing data, information governance in general. What are some of the challenges that these non-eDiscovery sort of initiatives have brought to the forefront?
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about 4 of them today, Mike. One is the ability to manage privacy and sensitive data. Again, we're all hearing about and dealing with DSAR and GDPR. We actually were involved in a DSAR project recently with Excel spreadsheets with 40 tabs. where everything needed to be redacted. And again, we've got technology to help do that. Redaction is a big deal. I mean, the ability to be able to manage FOIA requests and not have to put eyes on every record, but the ability to go in and search for whether it's PII or keywords. The breach is a bigger and bigger problem. I've got a diagram I'll show you in a minute that just it's amazing the amount of breach activity that's happening out there, unfortunately. And then legacy data management. I mean, we all know that this all started with paper back in the day, and but it's grown from there. I remember you would remember as well, kind of mid-2000s. If you and I were suing each other, we started to have not a box of paper and a box of paper, but a box of hard drives and backup tapes. And then that morphed into, oh crap, now I've got a lot of email. And that morphed into, hey, now I've got current email and I've got legacy email. And oh, by the way, I've also got a whole bunch of digital data stored on my servers. And oh, by the way, I've also got boxes and boxes in storage. And dealing with that legacy data, identifying what's referred to as rot data, which is redundant, obsolete, or trivial, being able to eliminate that from the data collection, the adoption of really strong governance policies, the ability to do that effectively is, again, something that our tool and eDiscovery tools in general have the ability to do natively. I mean, a lot of the things, again, that you saw a few minutes ago, thumbnail mode and being able to log into a secure access to a controlled server environment, those are quite unique. Again, I think we all take it for granted, but when you go outside of eDiscovery, the management of video, the management of audio files, the redaction of video, all those kind of things that we take for granted are quite unique outside our industry. That's what we're going to talk about today.
So can we dig in a little bit on DSARs, because I think not everybody appreciates the parallels between, sort of two parties sue each other, they exchange documents, everybody looks at the documents on both sides, they decide what's relevant, important, they share documents, right? Pretty straightforward. Not the case in a DSAR situation. What's going on there, and how are you solving this?
Yeah, so, from your audience's perspective, for those who don't know, DSAR stands for Data Subject Access Request, which is sort of termed as the right to be forgotten, the right for you to go to a former employer and be able to say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm kind of scrubbed from your system. And I want you to validate and verify that you no longer have any of my sensitive data within your organization. So one of the interesting things is we have some artificial intelligence, and we're going to focus in around maybe privacy and sensitive data just for a second as one of our first topics here. We have the ability through some of our artificial intelligence to go into millions of records and literally in probably under a minute to be able to bring back a report. And I'll just show you what that looks like here. Is that, here's an example of what we call a search term report. So imagine the ability to go through a group of records and drop them into an iConnect system, and with a click of a button, go and find out that, hey, 267 of these documents contain persons. Some of them contain emojis or money or bank information. So this is an example of a search term report that can come out of iConnect. This is a relatively small one. There's a 421 record database. There's 330 documents here that contain something. The balance of those effectively don't contain something. So that's the good news. You don't have to look at those. But the ones that contain something, you can now start to understand where the hotspots are. And what we did here was and I'll show you in a later part when we looked at the redaction how this is done, but the ability for me to go in and actually say, not only am I looking for all that stuff there, I also want to know every single time one of these individuals shows up. And oh, by the way, this is a product that I want to know if this product shows up in any of those things, because that's a sensitive, that's some of our internal IP. So the whole idea here really is to be able to identify the hit count, the unique document hit count, the percentage of documents that contain that information, and to be able to then make this dynamic so that I can go and take some of this information and work with it. And just to sort of show you what that looks like, when I go back over here, I'm going to go to a different database here. We've got what you can actually do as part of that report is you can say, hey, go and put all the documents that contain credit cards into a folder. Go and put all the documents that contain email addresses in a folder. Go and take all the ones that contain bank account information, put them in a folder. So you can see here on the fly, and this is done automatically. So this is a couple of clicks and a go button. That what we can do is actually go and take all this information here on the left-hand side, go and lay it out for you right here in folders. So if someone says, ooh, I'm only interested in anything that contains credit card numbers, now I just click the folder, it goes and finds that record for me, and sure enough, what does this document contain? It contains credit card numbers. And so this is exactly the kind of information which otherwise you might have a team of reviewers literally sitting in a room having to walk through record by record by record trying to find this information. And in fact, we can actually go and find it automatically using some of the AI that we have built into the platform. Not only that, is that we're tracking all the history of this record, everybody who looked at it, everybody who viewed it, everybody who coded it. So all the information in and around this record, not only what we found, but also the information about the record, all of that can be organized in tags and folders such that you can then filter and filter and filter down to a document collection that you want to share, or you want to redact, or you want to share with someone to maybe prove that you have in fact done the redaction. So certainly the ability to be able to do that without having to put eyes on every record, and don't get us wrong, you need to do a QA cycle on this, and you should have eyes on every record, but certainly this is a great way to get you started so that you can laser focus in on only that document that contains the credit cards and get a really head start on the project.
That's awesome. I don't think I've seen anything like this, and I'm not sure that our attendees have. What is actually, so this is all pre-programmed. I decide up front that I want these, are these just sort of commonly understood pieces of data that are formatted a certain way, and the AI is able to identify that? I just want to be clear for those who don't have an advanced understanding of AI and machine learning.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Mike. I mean, we all know that a credit card is 16 numbers. But right. beyond that, there might be the words Visa or MasterCard or MC or Discover or CC, colon. There might be things in and around that tell it that, but also there's certain format to a credit card. I'll give you an example here. We're going to talk about redaction in a minute, but just to get a little ahead of ourselves on that, we went in and we actually, on this one, we told it to go and redact credit card number. You can see there, that looks like a Visa card number. That looks like a Discover card number. And look at this one here. You know, here's an American Express with junk numbers in it. It even has a CVV and an expiry date, a valid expiry date. But the engine is smart enough to know that when you go to redact it, it's not going to redact that. Now, in this case, we also told it to redact names and countries. But it's smart enough to know that's not a credit card. So we're not just doing, and there are some other applications out there that just go, hey, if you find 16 digits separated by spaces, dashes, or all lumped together, call it a credit card. The technology that we're using goes one step further than that, and actually it looks at the intelligence in and around the number, in and around things like an address, the context of the record, and actually from there makes a determination. So we're sort of starting to blend into the whole redaction area now, but again, the AI that we're using, which is actually the AFI technology out of Oslo, Norway, that we'll talk about in a minute because we actually just acquired a copy of that source code. And it's really, really strong stuff, and it really gives us a strategic advantage in being able to tackle projects like this.
All right, so you jumped ahead, and I want to back up for our attendees. So you demonstrated how the redaction works, but that wasn't done manually.
No, oh no. Now with that said, I could do it manually. I mean, we literally have a redaction tool here where I could in fact go and say, oh, and by the way, that information there is confidential. I didn't have to click save. I didn't have to do anything other than draw a box. These other ones were actually done using XY coordinates, and look at that. There's actually there's actually metadata associated with that. We're logging all the activity in the background, so we can do it manually. We can even go so far as to inverse redact. So we can say, hey, redact everything, but keep that. And these are the kinds of workflow efficiencies that you talk about, that 20 years experience. I mean, you get a lot of feature requests in 20 years. And I'm proud to say we've added most of them into the platform. So it gives our audience a very strong way to be able to come in and really meet some of those business challenges head on.
All right, I just want to be clear here. So not only do I not have to, I can pre-program it to find certain pieces of data, so long as they're identified and they're formatted in a certain way, and I can tell it, you know what, don't even show me the document, just apply the redaction.
That 100% correct. And again, we have two other things happen here. First of all, the redaction is held as a layer. So I actually have the ability to go into QC mode here, and you may be able to see on the screen, I can actually look in behind the redaction and I can see the words that are there. Or I can hide the redaction totally, if through security I'm allowed to do that. But again, it's being held as a layer, so we're not affecting the original document. When I go to produce this, I can produce it with the black boxes on it. I can produce it native without the black boxes on it. I can layer security into this. So I can see what's under the black boxes, but you can't. The other thing we have the ability to do is to scrub the body text, so that when we have a record that has body text in it, we actually have the ability to go in, and if I turn it on, I can actually scrub the credit card name from the body text and replace it with the word redacted. So that when I go to produce, if in fact the body text is also produced, we make sure that we aren't inadvertently disclosing information through the body text field.
So it's like a rule. If it's been redacted, scrub the text.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, in fact, it's a checkbox. Correct.
All right, I got one more question. This is great for, understanding pre-formatted pieces of data.
Yeah.
What if it's not so strictly formatted? What if I'm looking for, I don't know, iterations of a name that might be spelled differently or spelled incorrectly?
Sure. So I'll maybe flip over and show you a couple of things related to that. So first of all, I'm just going to go in and here and do a search for the word Berlin. It'll come back and give me the 5 or 6 documents that contain the word Berlin. And when I go in and I look at that record there, which has the word Berlin in it, sure enough, it knows where the word Berlin is. So this is a built-in native file viewer for your audience members who don't know. This file viewer manages over 800 different file types, and it does some cool stuff. We're talking about J-size CAD drawings all the way down to old Corel Draw and Apple files. And so what we do on our end is we've gone and built in an HTML5 viewer. There's no plugins here that allow you to see all these documents in their native format. Not only that, we can mark where the word Berlin is in here. So let's say now I went, that's all well and good, but I need to redact the word Berlin. So we have a thing here called mass action. It allows me to do it against selected records, all the records in the database. You can see here, one of those is to redact records. So when I do that, and I'm going to move my little window here, and I now click next, I now say, well, what is it you'd like to redact? So I've got I'll just do a cover IC here, and I'm going to say I want the word redacted, or let's say the word RED, layered on top of every redaction. And then it's like, well, what would you like to redact? Well, what I'd like to redact here is I would like to redact PII for the USA. And that quickly, it will now redact all of that information for me. It doesn't care what the driver's license is. It doesn't care what state it's from. If it is a driver's license in the United States, regardless of the number, the system will identify it as a driver's license and put a redaction on top of it. Further to that, I'm going to say, well, I also want to go and search for the word Berlin, and I'll add that word to it as well, and you'll see now that over and above all that, it's also going to redact the word Berlin. Let's say I'm a pharma company, and I said, I don't really care about PII. I just want to redact any of these 25 drug names. Well, then you can click over here, click upload, and upload a text file of the 25 drug names, and it'll go and redact those instead or as well as. So tremendous capability to be able to do it. For DSAR, just to go back to where we were, we've actually run redaction jobs where redact every name and every email address. Now go back in and unredact this name and this email address. So that what you end up with is the only exposure of any email addresses in any of the correspondence is in fact the person who the DSAR was being run for, which then gives you the ability to prove out the fact that we've got all these records. Your name has been, these records have been removed from everywhere. And oh, by the way, we're not going to show you private information from other people at the same time. So again, a great way to do that. So when I go and click go, now what I get when I go to that Berlin record is that now what I have is I've not only automatically redacted the word Berlin, I had a whole bunch of other stuff in there too. I had a from, I had a fax number, I had a phone number, but there's the word Berlin. And not only that, you can see it's actually giving confidence scores in and around every redaction. You see, that's your audience may not be able to see that. It's a 92% confidence that that redaction was done properly. So again, a great way, 99% on that CC. So a great way to be able to go in and exactly what you said, the ability to go in and with very few clicks, go in and find phone numbers, names, addresses, email addresses, and just redact them with the ability to enact that Q&A cycle. So it can be a very, very strong way for your audience to deal not only with DSAR, but also on the redaction side with FOIA requests in any situation in any industry where the redaction of data or the identification of data is key.
The secret sauce revealed, but not really secret sauce.
It's not really that complicated. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of math happening in the background. I'll give you an example.
No, I get it.
We're going back to, was it grade 5, grade 6 when you start to learn XY coordinates? And so, every single one of these is held in a side table with XY coordinates, et cetera, et cetera. So for the top left, bottom right, so we know where to draw that box. So again, there's a lot of complexity in the background, but again, the complexity should be in the background. I mean, nobody goes on Spotify and wonders how they got their daily playlist, which engine was used and which algorithm it did. No, they just know they click a button and they get their daily playlist. That's how simple it should be here. It should be a user experience where all you need to do is go, hey, go redact this stuff, go, and the next thing they see is this. And that's our goal really in adapting AI into an eDiscovery experience, not only for eDiscovery users, but those outside of eDiscovery, is to create an environment and an interface where it's super easy for them to go and work on the data and get the results that they're looking for.
That's awesome. I want to talk about breach investigations for a second, but before I do that, do you have any sense, Ian, of the efficiency that this brings to the process? In other words, we're sitting here, we're looking at a very small data set, we're working on one document. What if I had millions of documents? Yeah. What is the efficiency? Do you have any metrics around how much time this could potentially save?
I think there's two answers. One is a lot, and the other one is it depends. I will tell you that we had a DSAR project recently, and we ran it against that 30-tab Excel spreadsheet. There was somewhere around 10 to 12,000 rows, about, I'm going to say 30, 40 columns. It was a lot of data. And Olivia Kane, who manages our support operations and the technical operations, we were in a demo and she ran it, and her comment was, "Ooh, God, that didn't take long. Maybe it didn't work." We were under 3 seconds between the time we hit go and the time we got the complete button. And we said, well, let's go look at it anyway. Sure enough, it had worked. So in under 3 seconds, that's a real-time metric, literally from a demo last week, with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of entries. And we were able to scan through that and do the redaction on that Excel spreadsheet in seconds, not minutes or days, but seconds. And I think that's indicative of this technology. The way we're storing the data, the way we're accessing the data, and the way we've gone and built the architecture proves out how that 20 years of experience in the field. It means we've optimized a lot of stuff in this platform. And that's a perfect example of being able to do something that even we thought should take a while, and it didn't. And and we get a lot of people who want to do POCs, proof of concept, where they'll give us some sample data, they'll ask us to run metrics against it, and we're open to doing that all day long. And we think that's a great way for us to have a shared experience in and around how it's performing on their data, not our test data.
Yeah, that's really smart. So before we move on, really quick, a question from the audience, Ian. once you mass redact, can you unredact a single item if you'd like?
Absolutely. So what we have here is in the mass redact, that we have a modify redactions area right here. And this is a way to go in and do different things where you can actually modify the annotation criteria by either removing them, copying them, or moving them to a different redaction layer. That's the other thing I didn't mention, is that within the iConnect platform, you can have multiple redaction layers. So if you've got various different production sets you need to do that need to be redacted in different ways, simple, same data set, 3 different layers of redactions. The great news for your IT folks is that they now don't need to store 3 copies of those files. It's 1 copy of the file, 3 redaction layers. So it's a very efficient way to be able to manage the data. And to answer your question, we actually we have a number of clients who use this extensively.
Awesome. Let's move on. You've got some experience in breach cases. What's the challenge and how do we solve?
Yeah, so I came across this recently. I wanted to share it with the group. This is an overview of breaches going all the way back down here in the bottom left from 2005. And as you can see, some of them are pretty big. There's the TJ Maxx one from 2007, 94 million records. I'm not sure I remember that one, but obviously it happened out there. But as we start to go up, here we are now into the 2011, 2012, 2013. And as we get into what we all see every single day, we're now into 20 and 21 with data breaches of 380 million here. This is an amazing one. Basically leaked passwords and addresses for every single man, woman, and child in all of Europe. I'm not sure we heard much about that one, but and the Marriott one we all remember from a few years ago. So as we can see, it has not gotten, it hasn't gone away, and it's only getting worse. And even Twitch, the online gaming platform, about a week ago, inadvertently through one of their servers in India, exposed the payroll for all of their social media influencers. So names your audience may or may not know, like Dr. Disrespect and Ninja and Pokemani and El Rubius, all the ones who make all their money on Twitch, all the ones your kids would know, their payroll got disclosed. And so again, it's certainly not going away. And what we did was we kind of went, well, wait a minute, since we have the ability to go and find PII, we talked a few minutes ago about using the ability to find PII for sensitive data, the ability to go and redact that. What if we actually used it for breach? And we did that. So what we've done is gone and taken the same sort of mechanisms that you saw there before, and said, well, what if we applied that to breach? So here's the Podesta information. This is Hillary Clinton's campaign manager in the 2016 campaign. This came off WikiLeaks, so it's pretty good data in that it contains a lot of PII. Think about what we did earlier. We went through and we identified all the documents and what PII they contain. So in this scenario, we ran this. We said, well, if the breach criteria that needed to be shared contained these 11 items: socials, banking, EIN, IDs, date of birth, maiden name, credit card, resume, 2 different levels of resume, a deep dive background check, that's a White House background check, a resume, attorney communication, passport. But just as important as identifying all of the documents that contain PII is identifying all the documents that don't contain sensitive information, because now you don't have to look at them. You don't have to waste attorney time or reviewer time doing that. So what we do is 2 things. First of all, we identify documents that contain no breach content. And when you look at this, you kind of go, well, that makes sense. It's a newspaper article. I'll make that a little bigger there. It's in fact, it's a magazine article. There's a happy birthday card. So these things don't contain PII. Perfect. There's sort of 3 different sizes of thumbnails that I was talking to you about earlier. But beyond that, we also identify files which contain multiple individuals. So here, for example, if we go in, is in fact the campaign donation list for Hillary Clinton. And what you're now seeing is you're seeing all the different PII, numeric values, all this information, but a number of different people involved. So the whole idea here is that we would take this file, for example, we'd go back to the client, go, how do you want to deal with this? Do you want a new record created for each row of this database, or each row of this Excel spreadsheet, in which case we would take this one file and we would make child files out of it, similar to email and with emails with children where they're the attachments. We would actually make child files, which are in fact the 143 individual rows, and now we can go in and start to analyze that information individually instead of as a mass piece here. Ultimately, as we go through all of this, you're finding things like date of birth and passports. There's a passport one here, for example, where it automatically found a document that contains just that, passport numbers. And you can see here, there's the passport ID number. Make that a little bigger here. There's the passport ID number. It also contains a place of birth and a date of birth. So that's sensitive data. But not only that, we've actually gone and cherry-picked it out of the document over here. So all of the sensitive metadata here is also over here because we have the ability to find it, in this case, not redact it, but in this case, copy it and paste it into a metadata field. And as well as that, we also then have a tag panel here with, in fact, passport number, date of birth, actually added to this information. So it's a great way to be able to go in and use some of the things you saw earlier being used for privacy and redaction, but use it for breach. At the end of the day, the goal is to end up with, I'm just going to go back here and I'll go to all. So it's to be able to look at this not in thumbnail mode, because thumbnail mode has its uses, but in this case, I'm going to go into grid view. So now we have a table view here. And what we now have is an indication of which custodian or which individual this data relates to. And we've now been able to identify that for that individual, we have an address, a social, an investment account number, and a phone number, and we know what all that information is. It's sitting right over here in metadata fields. So, because in some cases, all we have to do is send an email to Charlotte here, and in fact, that's Charlotte Clinton, Hillary's daughter, to send her a note that says, "Dear Charlotte, please be advised that your date of birth, comma, email address, comma, and name may have been inadvertently disclosed. Please protect yourself accordingly." And now the insurance companies kick in and they go, "Did you inform your clients to let them know?" "Yes, we did." Great, check that box, and now they can move forward with the insurance claim. So, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal might be to simply do a letter, in which case right there, you've now got the delimited information you need to do that, or it might be to actually validate what information was in fact captured. You can see here it was a date of birth. So again, two different ways to look at it from that perspective. And at the end of the day, what you also end up with then is the ability to analyze the data, to go one step further, to be able to come in here and say, I want to see the breach content by individual. And you can see here across the bottom, we have all of the individual's data which was compromised. And over here in color coding, we actually have the information that was compromised in a chart and a graph. And if I say, ooh, that credit card number, that's what I want right there, look what I can do. I can click on it, and I can actually create a query up here across the top and click go and have a look at that information. So again, I could say, yeah, that's what I want. I want all these credit card pieces here. And you can see I'm building that, and I hit go, and now I'm over there sitting in a subset of data, which in fact are only the documents that contain credit card information. And I know what credit card information they contain. The other thing I can do here, I'll just clear that for a second, is to, the other thing I can do is in that same way, I can come over here and I can say, not only am I interested in the information I asked for, show me information I didn't ask for. And look what we have now. We've got usernames, we've got passwords, we've got maiden names, we've got IP addresses. This is other information that may in fact be important, even though it wasn't something that in the breach request was identified. So again, a great way to go in and have a look at what information is available, have a look at what information needs to be reported against, and ultimately what we're trying to do here in the, go to a different one. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is to be able to identify the data which was involved in that breach and to be able to report against it. And again, ultimately, that comes out as an Excel spreadsheet that can go into a mail merge and then can go into the appropriate communication method out to all the people whose data was compromised.
That is some incredibly powerful stuff. Let's move on in our last segment to legacy data. What is the challenge here? How are you solving for this challenge? I imagine organizations everywhere have data. You know, could be a server collecting dust in the corner. What are you doing to help manage this?
Well, I think everybody would agree that the management of legacy data is a challenge. We all know, I mean, every report I read about the petabytes and petabytes that are being created every day. It went from megabytes to gigabytes to terabytes to petabytes to zettabytes. It just continues to grow. And the problem is people don't, I'm a hoarder. I don't like throwing stuff away. If I showed you my office, you'd see boxes and boxes of ideas we've had over the years. But from a corporate perspective, it is challenging. So what we've done is figured out, well, wouldn't it be interesting if you could go into a subset of data and you can analyze that data, looking for rot, data which is redundant, obsolete, or trivial, and get rid of it. Further to that, imagine if within an iConnect platform, you loaded all the data in and you ran some of that analysis that we looked at just a few minutes ago. The analysis to be able to identify anything that contains PII, anything that contains sensitive information, anything that contains specific keywords or individual names that maybe you do need to keep. Again, legal issues aside, you may need to keep it from a business retention perspective and an intelligence perspective. So what we've gone and done is a couple of different things. We are finding that the legacy data falls into two categories. It's either form data or it is in fact unstructured data. When I say form data, we're talking about things that are in a form. Here, for example, is a disability pension form. And what we've gone and done is we've developed a way, and this will start to look familiar, there's thumbnails, but instead of being in the middle, they're sort of down the side. Here over here are metadata fields that I think your audience are probably very familiar with. The ability now to be able to go in and imagine, if you will, we can say, look, there's Larry, there's Roswell, there's a social insurance or a veteran social number. We can actually cherry pick that information out and drop it directly into metadata fields, just like we did previously, except we're now doing it on a form basis. And what we have the ability to do here is that what we've gone and developed is we've gone and developed a template builder. So you can take virtually any form and say, oh, that's a text field, draw a box. That's a radio button, draw a box. And the radio button is linked to a drop down over here within the metadata. So the whole idea is you take virtually any form that's out there. We have a way to recognize forms on inbound. We do a pixel level match. So we know this is a 990 simply because all the pixels match up on a blank 990. And therefore, we go and layer the appropriate template on top of it and start to cherry pick out the metadata. And this is done incredibly quickly. Further to that, as it's coming out, we do some very interesting things. We do what's called background suppression. So we go and take that form, we go and blow out the background. So the only thing that is in the foreground is, in fact, the new data which was added. As well as that, you can see 100, 100, 100, 99. These are confidence levels of the OCR engine, whether printed material or handwriting, that can actually then pull the information out with a confidence level. And if it goes and finds something like this, which is, well, I think that might be an X, but it also might be a smudge, I'm going to give that a 35% confidence level. Well, this document here would be kicked over into a manual review stream automatically. So this is a piece that we've gone and developed called Extract, the ability, again, for us to go into form-level data and extract out the content on the form, again, for the purpose of going back a couple slides, being able to pull that data out and drop it effectively into metadata fields. And it goes one step further, because in the same way that we were looking at that information to redact it a few minutes ago, imagine you could go into virtually any document on the planet and say, go and cherry pick out for me any URLs, any email addresses, any reference numbers, any dates, Again, all the information that's important to you, things with dollar values beside them. So now that legacy data, let's say it's old invoices and purchase orders. Let's say it's old phone records. You can determine pretty quickly by being able to pull that stuff out into metadata, because once it's in metadata, you can filter it, and filter it again to be able to group down to the documents that are really, really important to you, and therefore everything else can go by the wayside. And then when you set that up as a regular routine, a part of a document retention policy, one that's written down and one that's followed, it gives you a very, very defensible position. Should any of these documents ever make their way back into a litigation, you can say, hey, we threw it out because that's our policy. And again, whether on the legal side or simply organizations looking to deal with legacy information, this is a great way for them to be able to go in and do that.
That's awesome. We've got about 9 minutes, and I want to highlight something that you've done. You mentioned using the AFI platform earlier, yeah. And I know that you recently purchased the source code to AFI's Inspector technology. Why did you do this? What does it bring to the table? What's the benefit to iConnect users?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. Just to sort of to preface that with, the iConnect platform is and continues to be the flagship of our technology. But using that iConnect platform and some of the pieces like AFI, we've been able to build modules and sort of expand our product matrix for things like Cover, which now manages all of the redaction of PII and FOIA requests, Extract, which is the extraction from forms or unstructured data, Fathom, which is the management of breach data, and Archive to manage legacy storage. And knowing that we want to continue to build out that product matrix, all of which require the ability to do some cool things with AI related to PII and PHI. We know that healthcare data is very sensitive as well. All of these pieces require that. And there's a lot of things we wanted to do with the tech. We've been working very closely with the group out of Norway for the past 4 years. This technology is already embedded in iConnect, and it's been embedded in iConnect for a number of years. This was an opportunity to go one step further. There's a whole bunch of cool things we want to do that were going to require us to get into the weeds in the code. And we approached the group in Norway, came to an arrangement, and now have a copy of that source code embedded right inside iConnect. So I think it does a couple of different things. First of all, it gives us direct access to the code, which means we can do some things with it we maybe couldn't do previously. It means that a lot of those ideas we've had on deck that, hey, it would be cool if at some point we could do X, we can now enact on that. But I think it's also a reinforcement to the marketplace that, as you alluded to earlier, having been 20 years in the business, means we've hit a lot of roadblocks, and we've solved a lot of problems, and we've optimized a lot of things, and we're always looking for new technology. We're always looking over the horizon. AFI's been long regarded as one of the best AI engines out there, and having the ability now to have that built in means that we can continue to look at our roadmap, look over the horizon, and develop some great products.
So just to be clear, if I'm an iConnect customer and I've got an idea, now's a good time to put that on your plate?
Absolutely. We have a whole page devoted to that on our website. But I think more importantly, it's an opportunity for us to really take this AI to the next level. I mean, we're seeing AI being so commonplace in our everyday lives now. I mentioned Shopify before, or iTunes, or any of the other, Amazon. All the different algorithms that are running to make sure that if you say the word bird food, you start getting bird food ads. That's not. That's similar technology. I mean, you're looking at information, and then you're saying, well, wait a minute. If it looks like that, let's go find other things that look like that. We have a piece called Exemplar within iConnect that we didn't talk about today, where I can create a synthetic document. This was used extensively in the BP oil spill case on the plaintiff side when they were overburdened on their production requests. And they had about 12 issues they were dealing with, and they created 12, we'll call them fake documents, 12, I know it's a bad term, 12 smoking gun documents. They literally took those and threw them into iConnect and said, is there anything that looks like this? And our software within seconds came back and said, you might want to look at these 50 documents because they're exactly what you told us you're looking for. That's all AI, pure AI. There's no Boolean search in that. It's pure AI. And the AP technology now means that if someone comes to us and says, oh, I'm looking for Harvard student card numbers, it's not really a syntax that you guys have. Can you build that? We can. And we can look for not only the syntax of it, but we can look for all the different parameters around what would normally be around a student card number and be able to identify those pretty quickly. And we can build that ourselves right inside the code. So I think there's tremendous optimizations for anybody who has ideas to be able to use the iConnect tech as a foundation for those ideas.
All right, cool. All right, I've got 2 questions remaining. We've got a little bit of time. I want to get your thoughts on these. First of all, from where you're sitting, what is the most innovative change you've observed over the last 18 months or so in legal technology? And then what should we be doing in education? Because ACEDS at the end of the day is all about education.
Sure.
To think outside the eDiscovery box, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll maybe answer the second question first. I mean, I think people historically would go, oh my God, how am I ever going to deal with this? I think education is key to them realizing that there's a lot of very strong technology out there, not only ours, but others as well. There's probably a way to solve your problem. And I think keeping yourself educated, I mean, just the fact that your audience is on this call today and some of the others who may watch it post live, I think the fact that they're continuing to educate themselves is huge. I mean, it means that they have now a larger breadth of knowledge to tackle problems than other people have. And I think that's what sets the innovators aside from those who go, oh, this is a disaster, what are we going to do? There are ways to solve virtually any technical problem. And education, I think, is key for that. With regard to your first question about sort of what's been innovative in the last 18 months, I think more and more we are seeing a level of expectation out there that it's got to be simple. I think we're starting to see companies who have complex interfaces and a complex user experience are struggling. And I think it's those companies who are providing the advanced functions in the advanced button, to use a very, very simple analogy, that those are the ones that are being successful. I mean, let's face it, we all go into Microsoft Word, we use 20% of that program, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in Microsoft Word or Excel that you don't touch and you will never touch. iConnect is no different, and there's a way to strip down that platform to the point where all you do is log in and go next, 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 and put on redactions and code. If that's all you want to do, you can do that. But for those other users who want to tweak the AI and change the stop words and customize indexes, you can do that too. But we don't expose that to the end user. That's in the advanced button, and you need certain credentials to go into that advanced button. So I think that's what we're seeing probably in the eDiscovery marketplace, is that companies who have business models and user interfaces and force you to move out of one platform into another to do something, to bring it back again, I think those companies are going to continue to struggle, and those companies who have given a smooth UI and a smooth user experience, those are the ones who are going to continue to succeed.
Awesome. We are at time. I want to give you 2 seconds to plug your podcast. Who's your upcoming guest?
We have a Wednesday podcast called weCONECT. Ari Kaplan, I believe, is on deck for that. Maybe he was last week, I'm not sure. I spent some time with Ari out in New York talking about some of the interesting things that we're doing, a little different than what we talked about today, but I believe that's weConnect Wednesdays is what it's called. And you can go to the iConnect website and check that out. I'll just go there now. And if you just go to resources and go to weConnect podcast, there's a whole series of those there. And you can listen in. We've had some great guest speakers, and you can listen to some interesting stuff. And we'll make sure that this one gets added probably within the next 48 hours.
Awesome. Ian Campbell, everyone. iConnect. Learn more about iConnect at iConnect.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the ACEDS webinar channel today. Thank you, Ian, and of course, our fantastic partner, iConnect, for a great presentation. Please visit aceds.org for a complete list of our upcoming webinars. Have a great day, everyone, and be kind to one another.
weConnect, brought to you by iConnect, making information accessible.